Rogue and Sting made it on time to save Minerva, although it took a while for them to get there because Erza's writing was really bad. Sting says to Minerva that they will return to the guild together. However, Margeir tells them that the world of magic is coming to an end. Even though Erza believed that Face was destroyed, Margeir tells them that only one of them was destroyed. There is approximately 3,000 faces, even though in the previous couple chapters it was supposed to be 2,000 faces, so what the fuck, that will activate simultaneously within an hour. However, Face can only be remotely controlled, and the only one who can do that is Crawford, who is dead. Luckily for Tartarus, they have a necromancer in their guild, and it's none other than Keith. As they speak, Crawford is in the control room trying to activate Face, so Rogue and Sting stay back to fight against Margeir, while Erza and Minerva head to the control room to stop Crawford. Their fight commences, and it kinda goes as how you expect. Rogue and Sting pull off some pretty cool moves with their Dragon Slayer magic, and they work pretty well together, but it's futile in the end because this is the freaking Demon King. Also, apparently, Margeir can create a rose bomb. Meanwhile, with Grey and Silver, Silver told Grey about the 3,000 faces. It seems he knows a lot about Grey, but his appearance and voice resemble someone that Grey knows in his past, but they belong to someone else. And that's basically where the chapter ends. When I first read this chapter, I thought this chapter was decent to good. The fight between Sabretooth, Rogue and Sting, and Margeir, it started off pretty well, but it was kind of futile in the end because we all know this is Margeir, the Demon King. Even though Rogue and Sting did pull off some pretty good Dragon Slayer techniques, and they do work well together, but let's face it, are they really gonna defeat the Demon King? Keith being a necromancer, I think it's neat. Although, when did he resurrect Crawford? But aside from that, there are only two things in this chapter that really pissed me off. One was that cliffhanger ending. It seems that Hiromashima is trying to keep the mystery between Grey and Silver's connection. But everyone knew at this point, hell, ever since Silver was introduced, that Silver was Grey's father. So there was really no point in ending it in a cliffhanger like that, unless you want to piss off the fairy tale fans. But from what Grey said, it seems that Silver may only be Grey's father in terms of appearance and voice. So maybe a demon took over Silver's body, like what happened with Capricorn, or Father from Full Metal Alchemist, or Bogey Woods from Toriko, or something. And number two, it was what Sting said to Minerva. It really pissed me off that he is still calling her princess even though she isn't or doesn't deserve to be called princess. But the fact that he is willing to give her redemption, welcoming her back to Sabretooth even after all the terrible things that she's done. I'm not going to repeat myself many times over what Minerva has done, but really, Sting? He is the freaking guildmaster of Sabretooth, which means that you cannot be very forgiving and you have to make tough choices, but it's all for the sake of your guild. I know he's trying to not be like Genma, but come on! At least with Makarov, he drew the line somewhere. He even banished Loxus, his own grandson, from Fairy Tail after what he did during the Battle Royale arc. I'm sorry, but how did Sting become guildmaster again? Because I'd like to know that. I must have missed something when I read the chapters. Silver tells Grey that he is his father. Well, it's about goddamn time. Also insert Star Wars joke here. But Grey believes that it's a lie because he saw his father die by the hands of Delioro when he destroyed his old hometown. They begin to fight, but Silver gains the upper hand with his Ice Devil Slayer magic, saying that he is part of a much greater existence and that they were destined to fight. Meanwhile, the remaining Tartarus members are fighting against Fairy Tail's Natsu, Gajiel, and Juvia. They were holding their own for a while, but the favor went to Tartarus' side. As for Juvia, she's starting to have a bad feeling that something was happening to Grey. Lucy wants to help out, but Natsu tells her that they got this. Gajiel and Natsu, with their sense of smell, were also aware that Rogue and Sting arrived, as we cut back to them fighting against Margeir. They do manage to land a couple of blows, but they do nothing against the Demon King, as he understands why Kyoka wanted to play with the humans. Meanwhile, Erza and Minerva, along with Frosh and Lecter, try to find the control room to stop Crawford, but they run into the other Exceeds, Panther Lily, and Happy. Minerva Minerva, being the only one who's suspicious over the fact that Happy has a mushroom on his head, yanks it out, revealing it to be Franmouth, and knowing that he knew where the control room is, they're gonna force Franmouth to lead them to the control room. Meanwhile, with Gray and Silver, he reveals more to Gray about his body. In actuality, Gray's father was just a vessel, a corpse being used by the actual demon possessing its body. The reason why he normally uses a human form is because his demon form is quite inconvenient, and he just happened to come upon Gray's father's corpse and decided to use it as his own vessel. But who is the demon that took over Gray's father's body? It is none other than Deliora, which shouldn't be possible because Deliora was originally trapped by Ice Shell by and when Deliora was freed, his body was completely frozen and turned into ice back in Galuna Island. So how is Deliora alive? Well, it was thanks to Tartarus's Hell's Core that regenerated Deliora into Gray's father's body, and now he's back for vengeance. Gray gets pissed off and in a blind rage attempts to attack Silver. Meanwhile, with Keith, apparently he told all this to Juvia for some reason, and the chapter ends with Keith saying, "The power of that calamity once again bringing forth that despair, and so in the end the young boy will choose the same fate as his master." This chapter had plenty of action and surprising twists. The fighting throughout this chapter was pretty good, and I wasn't expecting it to be Deliora to be the one possessing Gray's father's body, and I kinda like this twist, but it doesn't make a lot of sense. Silver said that he was defeated by over 10 years ago. In actuality, it would have been 10 years ago before the 7-year time skip. So wouldn't it have made more sense if Silver said that he was defeated by 17 years ago? Also, during the Galuna Island arc, we saw his body, when it was freed from Ice Shell, that he was still able to move and that he was still roaring. He was still functional. But his body turned into ice. Maybe he placed his soul inside Gray's father's corpse as a vessel, but that wouldn't make sense because then Tartarus would have to know about the corpse of Gray's father and then use Hell's Cores to bring back Deliora and use that body as a vessel. And this guy was frozen for over 10 years when used Ice Shell, and he was currently invading another town before he was trapped in Ice Shell. And I'm assuming this was a different town from where he attacked Gray. So unless he kept Gray's father's corpse preserved in a different location, this still doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, from what Keith said at the last page, the young boy will choose the same fate as his master. It seems to be foreshadowing that Gray might use Ice Shell just like but that's not gonna happen because that would take a huge step back on Gray's character. I mean, during the Galuna Island arc, he was gonna use Ice Shell, but Natsu had to be the one to stop him. So if Gray used Ice Shell, then everything that he went through during the Galuna Island arc would have been nullified. As for the rest, the action was pretty good, and the middle part with the Exceeds, Minerva and Erza, they were okay. So overall, good chapter. Gray and Silver, aka Deliora, proceed to fight yet again, but Silver gains the upper hand by eating the ice from Gray's cold Excalibur, proving that just like God Slayers and Dragon Slayers, even Devil Slayers can eat their own element. Silver learned Ice Devil Slayer magic so that he would be capable of defeating Ur's disciples. Meanwhile, Keith, who is still fighting against Juvia, tells her why a Devil Slayer has joined in the ranks of the Kyukimon. He says that it was either a whim out of the Dark King or was so that he can act as a deterrent. Either way, he was recognized by the Dark King. Back with the Gray and Silver fight, Gray uses Ice Impact, but just like the cold Excalibur, Silver eats the ice and uses a technique called Hyoma no Gekiko, Ice Demon's Rage. Gray, not giving up, makes ice cannons that shoot out rubble at Silver, and then Silver froze the entire area. But just like back at the Sun Village, Gray uses the magic of the ice to attack Silver because Silver can't eat his own ice. However, the attack doesn't work, and that's where the chapter ends. Now, as much as I like the action in this chapter, I can't help but feel like this was going through a formula. Gray uses a technique, it doesn't work on Silver, and then Silver counters back. This chapter also shows that it doesn't matter whether it be Gray's ice or Silver's own ice does not work on an Ice Devil Slayer apparently. So the question is, how is Gray gonna defeat Silver if ice does not work on him? Still, this chapter was straightforward and it was a pretty good read. Wendy's plan to stop Face was to contact all the guilds in the continent to combine their strength to stop Tartarus' plan. Juvia is still struggling with her fight against Keith, knowing that Gray will use Ice Shell against Silver, and speaking of Silver, he proceeds to kick Gray, all the while taunting him. Gray gets up and vows that he must win no matter what, as he proceeds to use Ice Shell. Realizing that Gray was not bluffing, Silver freezes Gray's entire body, but it was revealed that it was an ice clone. Thinking about Natsu's words back in Galuna Island, along with his fairy tale guild members, Leon, his teacher Ur, Juvia, and Ultir, he says, "I'm sorry," as he activates Ice Shell. However, Silver was able to break the ice shell with an ice blast, but it turns out that Gray was also an ice clone. Gray, realizing that he was about to forget something important, refuses to die because he doesn't want to see his friend's tears, as he pulls out a steel ball that he uncovered from the rubble that was not frozen by Silver's ice, and uses Ice Meg Vambrace to toss the steel ball really hard, sending it right through Silver. Gray, being victorious, then says that Silver was not Deliora possessing his father's corpse, but his actual true father. Okay, Deliora not being Silver was kind of a cop-out, but on the other hand, the timelines didn't make a lot of sense. But what I don't understand is why the hell did Silver go through the charade pretending to be Deliora? We know that he did die, so did Tartarus manipulate Silver to fight Gray? Speaking of Gray, I'm so glad he didn't use Ice Shell, because if he did, all that development during the Galuna Island arc would have been completely nullified. Now, I do like most of Gray's fights, but when did he have time to hide a steel ball under the rubble to prevent it from being frozen? And even if it was hiding in rubble, wouldn't it still have been frozen anyway? Unless he really did unfreeze the steel ball that he hid in the rubble while Silver was being occupied with the ice clones. Still, I thought the conclusion to the fight was decent, even though Silver got defeated by a steel ball. So it's confirmed that Silver really is Gray's father, except he's now a corpse. He did die when Deliora attacked Gray's town, but he was resurrected as part of an experiment by Keith, a necromancer with the ability to control the dead. His aim was to determine just how closely one could make the existence of a corpse resemble its former self, and Silver, out of the several hundred corpses, managed to live this long. And it was for the sake of revenge against the demons that stole his family away from him. He stayed in Tartarus, while in secret killed demons whenever he stumbled upon them. As for freezing the Sun Village, that was a misunderstanding. He was slowly weakening the power of the demons around him until he finally made a plan that would destroy Tartarus. That was then he learned that Gray was alive while he was watching the Grand Magic Games. So he decided to erase his own existence. He then apologizes to Gray for all the things he said to him, but Gray realized that he did all this so that he can conquer his own demons. Gray insists that Silver is still his father, but Silver tells him that a father wouldn't hit his son. He wants Gray to finish him off, who creates an ice sword, and tells him that even if he is his father, none of that matters if he's an enemy of Gray's guild. Yet Gray couldn't bring himself to kill his own father as he drops his ice sword and starts to cry. Silver approaches his son and gives him a hug, saying that he wants to hold him for a little while, and that he's grown into a fine man. The small grave that was shown in Silver's introduction was revealed to be the grave of Gray, who he believed was dead, and his wife, Mika. Meanwhile, with Juvia, who also learned about Silver courtesy of Keith, receives a telepathic message from Silver telling her to defeat Keith, who's using his Necromancer Curse ability to control the dead chairman to activate the 3,000 faces. Once Keith is defeated, the chairman will stop moving and Face will once and for all be stopped. But Juvia also knows that if Keith is defeated, this would also be the end of Silver. This chapter was really good in terms of emotion. You can't help but feel really bad for Gray and Silver, especially when they were hugging and crying. I mean, this is the first time they had like a father-son moment ever since Silver died. However, there were a couple things that did bug me in this chapter. What was the point of Keith telling Juvia about Silver being a corpse, it felt like there was nothing to gain from that. Now, Silver being a corpse resurrected as an experiment by Keith, I actually didn't mind that. But he did say that a necromancer has the cursed ability to control the dead. It didn't seem that Keith was controlling Silver. Couldn't he have just told Gray the truth in the first place instead of fighting him? I mean, it's not like that they were being spied on or anything. They were pretty far away from the rest of the Kukimon members. I thought this was just a test to see what his son can do, but no, apparently the reason the fight happened was so that Silver can help Gray overcome his demons. Which is weird because I thought the whole Ice Shell and Deliora plot points were already resolved back in Galuna Island when Natsu convinced him not to use it. Maybe there was something that was still lingering inside Gray that I must have missed. I mean, I did recall him being afraid when he fought against that one demon guy back in the Sun Village, and he instantly thought that was Deliora, but I thought that was because he was turned back into a kid. This was before he gained that resolve back in Galuna Island, so I don't know, I think I might have missed something. And finally, the one most important thing that really did bug me about this chapter, it did not explain how Silver discovered Ice Devil Slayer magic. How did Silver stumble upon Ice Devil Slayer magic? How did he learn it? Also, since when can Silver use telepathy magic? Is this something that Ice Devil Slayers can also do as well, or is this something that he also learned how to do? So yeah, if it wasn't for these things that bugged me, I would have thought this chapter was great. But I'll settle this for a good. Natsu and Gaju continue with their fights against Tempesta and Torfusa while Lucy watches. With Juvia, she was wondering what Silver told her was the right thing to do for Gray's sake. According to Keith, Tartarus knew this whole time that Silver was acting against them, knowing that it was his anger and burning desire for revenge was what allowed him to extend his life for so long. Yet, they didn't do anything to stop him because it benefited them for some reason. Keith thinks of humans as research tools, which pisses off Juvia as she launches a water attack at him. But he dodges and traps Juvia with his black sand particle tentacle things. I don't know. Lucy tries to get up to help, but she gets attacked by a couple skeletons that were summoned by Keith's curse ability, while Keith eggs on Juvia, telling her to sever the bond between father and son. But she just cries and says, "I can't," claiming that emotions are but impediments of reason. Keith tries to blow up Juvia with more of that black mass particle stuff. Again, I don't know what the hell that stuff is, which surprises everyone, but it turns out that Juvia turned herself into water and entered inside Keith's body. She blows him up, reappearing, saying that bonds between humans cannot be severed, and even if they change form, feelings always remain in the heart, because that's what she believes to be the strength of human love. The skeletons disappear, and Juvia apologizes over and over again. Silver, using his telepathy magic one more time, thanks Juvia for letting his soul find peace and tells her to take care of Gray. He then leaves the rest to Gray, saying the reason he learned Ice Devil Slayer magic was because End is a flame demon, and he bestowed upon Gray his Ice Devil Slayer magic so that he can become an Ice Devil Slayer to destroy End. Once again, the emotion in this chapter was good, but just like how I felt about Ezel, Keith was pretty underwhelming. I thought he'd have great potential considering that he was a necromancer, and he seemed to be the Mayuri in the group, you know, with his concept of humans being tools and his experiments and all that. But considering his easy defeats, he's kind of a letdown, really. Since it was revealed that Tartarus knew about Silver's plans, I couldn't understand why they didn't do anything to stop him. Keith said it benefited them, but was it because he was an Ice Devil Slayer? Was that it? I just assumed they let him do whatever he wanted because they believed that Silver couldn't be able to stop them. Well, that or Keith wanted to continue with his experiment to see what drives him to live for so long or something. Juvia's speech about human bonds didn't really bug me as much as the rest of the speeches you usually hear in Fairy Tail, but I can't help but wonder how the hell her clothes were torn considering that she turned into water. Was it because of those particle whip things? The fight overall, I thought it was okay. I mean, it wasn't the best Juvia fight that I've seen so far, but it was still okay to read. But I did like the closure that Silver got with Gray, especially his goodbye to his son, and to Juvia, of course. We also learn a little bit more about End, which is that End is a flame demon. And we also learned the reason why Silver wanted to learn Ice Devil Slayer magic. By the way, if you're wondering about my thoughts about Natsu being End, It's a possibility, but we won't know until we learn more about End or if End makes an appearance himself. But the end of the chapter really bugged the hell out of me, and that is Gray being a nice Devil Slayer. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm glad that Gray got a power-up. Also, he's got a pretty cool tattoo on his arm. But you mean to tell me that Devil Slayer magic can be transferred to non-Devil Slayer magic users? Really? Does this also apply with Dragon Slayer magic and God Slayer magic? I mean, okay, Future Rogue did the same thing with Sting when he killed him and stole his white Dragon Slayer magic, but I just assumed because they were both Dragon Slayers. Maybe this wouldn't bug me so much if we knew, anything about Devil Slayer magic. We know that it's a type of Slayer magic used to kill demons, but that's all we know so far. Hell, we still don't know how Silver discovered Ice Devil Slayer magic. We knew why he wanted to use it, we just didn't know how he found it. Now, we don't know if Gray's Ice Devil Slayer magic is temporary or not, but considering that he's going to use it to fight against End, I don't see him winning. It's not that I don't want Gray to win, it's the fact that I see End being the final villain of this arc, and we all know that the main villains of every arc has to be defeated by the main character, which happens to be Natsu. So, as much as I want to see Gray fight against End, I can't help but feel like it's going to be Natsu who's going to fight against End and defeat it. That is if, Natsu is not End. So overall, this chapter was okay, but the ending kind of confused me a bit.